Even so, I'm really disappointed in Michelle.
What?
When I first met Michelle, you seemed so unattainable. It felt like a real challenge to win you over.
I was stunned by Eric's words. To my husband, Eric, I was just a difficult conquest. But if that's how he feels, I won't hold back either. I don't want to continue our relationship anymore. I'll gather evidence and break up with him.
He's in a critical condition.
I don't have time to get caught up in confusing situations. He's not my husband. I'll firmly tell Eric and show him what a real breakup looks like. My name is Michelle Brown, 27 years old. I'm just an ordinary company employee. We got married about a year ago, so we're no longer newlyweds. My husband, Eric, who is a year younger than me, works at a company we do business with. We met when we started working together on a joint project. To be honest, I thought he was handsome from the first time I met him, but I didn't think much more of it. I'm a workaholic, if I do say so myself. Maybe that's why I have an unapproachable aura, and people don't often talk to me outside of work. Because of that, I've never had much of a love life. I thought it would stay that way.
Michelle, you're so cool. I can always rely on you.
During breaks at work, Eric would often smile and talk to me like that. At first, I wished he would focus on work instead of chatting with me. But as he kept talking to me, my rigid demeanor gradually softened. In every aspect, he was very considerate, and I felt my heart waver each time I experienced his kindness. Before I knew it, I started to dread the end of our joint project. It seemed like he felt the same way.
If you don't mind, how about we keep seeing each other outside of work?
When Eric said that to me, I was honestly overjoyed. That's how we started dating, and eventually, his proposal led to our marriage. I still think our newlywed life started off as perfectly happy. His family welcomed me warmly, and I had no real complaints. But recently, I've started to feel a bit out of place. On the surface, our life hasn't changed, but something feels off. At some point, Eric's gaze doesn't seem as intense as it used to be. It's not like he's completely lost interest in me, but it doesn't feel the same as when we first started dating after the project ended. It's probably normal for things to change after a year of marriage. I tried to convince myself of that, but I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Take household chores, for example. When we first got married, we took turns doing the dishes and preparing meals. We tried to split the laundry and trash duties as evenly as possible to lessen each other's burdens. But recently, Eric has been doing fewer chores.
Sorry, I've been really busy lately.
It's true, Eric has been working a lot of overtime recently. He apologizes and hasn't completely stopped helping. However, this period has just barely settled down from the busy season. So it didn't make sense to me why things were still hectic. Lately, I haven't been visiting Eric's company, so I have no way of knowing what his work involves. A new joint project has started, but someone else is in charge this time. That person. Sally is a colleague I haven't spoken to much. Apparently, she's the daughter of a senior executive and doesn't seem interested in getting along with others. She was reportedly pushed into the projects to build her track record. I don't know the full story. In any case, I'm not close to her, so I don't know the details of the project. Therefore, I can't be sure if his company is currently busy. Maybe I'm just overthinking things. My company, which does similar work, isn't busy right now, so it's probably just making me suspicious. However, there are other things that bother me, pulling my thoughts in different directions. It's Eric's body odor. Despite coming home after working late, he doesn't smell. In fact, he smells good, as if he had just taken a shower. His company has a small shower room, so it's not strange. I want to believe that, but there's something off.
I'm so tired. I'll take a shower first.
Saying that, Eric comes home and immediately takes a shower. If he had already showered at work, he wouldn't need to do it again at home. Even if he had been on a crowded train, which he wasn't since he drives his own car to work. Moreover, since I met Eric, he hasn't been someone who is particularly meticulous about body odor. I've never seen him use the company shower room before. That's why I can't help but feel something is wrong.
Is that okay?
This was said by a male coworker at the company cafeteria. It's strange to think that I, who was once a rookie, am now in a position to mentor younger employees. He's a bit unreliable, so I often have to watch over him closely. Today, as I was correcting his mistakes, lunchtime arrived before I knew it. We were about to take a break and have lunch separately, but he noticed my gloomy expression and insisted we eat together. I had no intention of talking about my situation, but he kept pressing, and I ended up speaking. I'm not sure if I gave in too easily or if I was more anxious than I realized. When I reluctantly explained, he looked puzzled. Unable to understand his puzzled expression, I asked him, "What is all right?"
Well,
He looked uncomfortable when I asked. It might be something hard to say, but I needed to know. "Go ahead, tell me." Urged by me, he scratched his head and awkwardly said,
staying late at work, neglecting housework, and being distant. Aren't those common signs of an affair?
"Right?" Being told so directly left me speechless. In fact, he was right. Those elements combined are exactly what you find in novels or dramas when someone is having an affair. While there are endings where the person is actually working hard for their family and the couple ends up happy, most of the time it's just an affair. I felt embarrassed for not realizing it until now. Or maybe I knew and just didn't want to think about it. The idea that Eric might be cheating.
No, I'm sorry. It's just a guess.
It's fine. Thank you. I nodded slightly to my junior colleague. If he hadn't pointed it out, I might have kept turning a blind eye. As a thank you, I paid for both of our lunches and left the cafeteria ahead of him. I wanted to clear my thoughts before getting back to work. The possibility that Eric might be cheating seemed quite likely. Thinking about it made my heart feel unsettled. Now that I realize it, I couldn't ignore it. I wouldn't be able to focus on work or even live normally. When I get home, I'll ask Eric directly. With that decision, I finally felt a bit more stable. I managed to get through work and went home when it was time. When I arrived at our apartment as it was getting dark, Eric still wasn't home. I anxiously waited, but Eric didn't come back for a long time.
I'm home, working late again today.
Eric walked through the door after 11 p.m. Again, he didn't smell bad. In fact, he seemed to have a pleasant scent. Disturbed by this, I took his jacket as he headed for the shower. "I'm sorry." I whispered an apology and searched his jacket pockets. I hoped not to find anything, but sadly, my wish was betrayed. From the inside pocket of Eric's jacket, a condom fell out. There's no reason to keep something like that in his work jacket. There shouldn't be any situation where he'd receive one. If he bought it for us, it wouldn't make sense to have just one. If that were the case, it should be in an open box. If there's another reason I can't imagine, I'd have to hear it directly from him. Resolute, I stopped Eric, who had already showered and was getting ready for bed.
What's wrong, Michelle?
He looked completely unfazed, not at all like someone who was cheating. Honestly, I hesitated to ask, but I couldn't leave this unease unaddressed. This was in your jacket. What's the meaning of this? I voiced my question sincerely, driven by my thoughts. Maybe I didn't need to be so blunt, but I wanted to face him directly. I hoped that by doing so, he would face me directly in return. But that hope was quickly shattered.
So, what do you think, Michelle?
What? His response wasn't flustered or straightforward. It was a twisted remark mocking me.
Do you think this means I'm cheating?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. That was the truth. The situation seemed pretty damning, but I couldn't be certain. I wanted to know for sure, and I wanted Eric to tell me. But he had no intention of doing that.
Can't you just say you trust me?
I want to trust you. That's why I'm trying to get clarity.
Then just trust me without asking questions, right?
His irresponsibility left me speechless. Are you telling me to ignore your cheating?
I'm not saying that. Interpret it however you want. But if you're going to accuse me of cheating, show me solid proof.
If I had that, I wouldn't be asking in the first place. Eric probably understood that too. He just kept smiling smugly. All I could do was stammer in front of him. Well,
If you don't have anything, don't stir up trouble.
Eric shrugged at my silence.
Even so, I'm really disappointed in Michelle.
What?
When I first met you, Michelle, you seemed so unattainable, like a real challenge.
What is he talking about? I couldn't grasp the meaning behind his words. No, I didn't want to understand. I didn't want to believe he saw our relationship, our marriage, as some sort of game.
I thought it would be interesting even after we got married, but it wasn't. Well, it's easier for me this way.
What are you saying?
Nothing much. Just that being married to you is more boring than I thought.
After saying that, Eric yawned sleepily. His attitude didn't reflect someone being accused of cheating. But I was so shocked, I couldn't find words to respond. Eric then told me in a completely normal tone.
If you want a divorce, make sure you bring proof. Don't waste my time.
With that, he left me standing there and went to his room. Eric slept in his own room on nights when he worked late, claiming he didn't know when he'd fall asleep. But now I couldn't believe it was because of work. Still in a daze, I watched him go. From that day on, our daily lives changed drastically. The biggest change was Eric's attitude toward me. He stopped doing even the minimal amount of housework he used to do. The meticulousness Eric had when we first met was no longer there. And now he looked at me with clear disdain. With that same disdainful attitude, he continued to claim he was working late and kept coming home late. I must be a fool. Given his attitude and the likely affair, I shouldn't be doing Eric's chores or preparing his meals. But because of the memories we shared, I couldn't sever ties with him. I continued doing the household chores and living as we always had. I held a faint hope that Eric might return to the man I married. One day, something unexpected happened. Who could it be? That day, Eric also claimed to be working late and hadn't come home yet. Around 9 p.m., when I should have just gone to bed, the doorbell rang. Eric had a spare key, so he wouldn't need to ring the bell. Wondering who it could be, I looked through the peephole and saw a woman standing there. She had a somewhat plain appearance. You might call her an introvert these days. "Who is it?" I asked through the door, and the woman looked a bit surprised before speaking.
Are you Michelle?
"Yes, I am."
I'm the woman who's been involved with Eric.
Her unexpected statement left me wide-eyed. To openly admit to an affair and show up at my house. But something didn't add up. Eric wasn't home yet. I had already contacted an old colleague and confirmed that Eric's company wasn't busy right now, so he should still be out with another woman. It was odd that this woman was here. With that in mind, I decided to invite her in and hear her out. Her name was Emily, and she worked for a subcontractor of Eric's company. Emily said she had grown attracted to Eric after he treated her kindly during their business interactions and had confessed her feelings to him.
Sure, I've never met someone like you before.
And so, Eric had been with Emily a few times.
But I didn't know he had a wife.
While talking in the living room, Emily looked down apologetically. It seemed Eric hadn't mentioned me before they got involved. After finding out later, Emily felt guilty but couldn't easily sever her feelings for Eric. Not knowing what else to do, Emily looked up my address even though she knew it was wrong and came here today. She wanted to apologize, explain, and talk about her relationship with Eric in front of me. Normally, I should have been angry with her too. But there was someone I wanted to explode in anger at even more. None other than Eric. Listening to Emily's story, any lingering attachment I had for Eric was completely severed. Eric had married me and then had an affair, and now he was involved with Emily as well. From what she told me and from what Eric had said to me, I finally understood. Eric was treating relationships with women like a game. Facing someone like that head-on made me feel foolish. I concluded that I needed to separate from him as soon as possible. With that decision, I felt a clear sense of sympathy for Emily. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you."
What?
Starting with that, I told her everything she needed to know. In essence, I advised her to cut ties with Eric quickly for her own sake. This also included cooperating with me for my divorce. By the end of our conversation, Emily's eyes reflected the same anger I felt. A week passed after that incident. It should be about time. Eric claimed he had to work late again today, but I knew that wasn't true. So, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to try something and pulled out my phone. "Who is it?" The rarely used house phone started ringing. Wondering who it could be, I answered it. A tense male voice came from the other end.
This is the emergency service. Are you Eric's family?
"Yes. What happened to him?" I frowned, not understanding the situation. The caller identified himself as hospital staff and named the hospital before delivering unexpected news.
Please stay calm. About 10 minutes ago, Eric was brought to our hospital. He's in critical condition and unconscious.
Oh my God.
I understand it's hard to believe, but it's the truth.
The man's voice was filled with such sadness it was hard to bear. But I was very skeptical. "I see." In one hand, I held my phone, which showed the location of the GPS tracker I had placed in Eric's car. To gather evidence of the affair, I had secretly planted a GPS tracker on Eric's car a few days ago, which now showed it parked at a motel. I unexpectedly found proof of his infidelity, but it meant the person the hospital was talking about wasn't the Eric I knew. So I firmly told the person on the other end of the phone, "Sorry, but that's not my husband.
What? But,
I'm very sorry, but this must be a mistake. Please contact someone else." I then hung up the phone. I felt sorry for that Eric. I could only hope he would be all right. But I had my own issues to deal with. I checked the GPS location on my phone again and took a taxi to the motel where Eric and his affair partner were likely staying. If possible, I wanted to catch them coming out of the hotel and take photos. Even if I couldn't catch them, I could at least confirm the location. Later, I could either stake it out or hire a private investigator, which would save me some trouble. When I arrived, I found the motel in a somewhat rundown area. Looking into the parking lot, I saw Eric's car. This alone would be enough evidence, but knowing Eric, he might play dumb with an innocent face. Ideally, I'd like to catch him in the act. So for a while, I hid near the entrance of the motel, waiting for Eric and his companion to come out. But that's odd. No matter how long I waited, they didn't come out. Instead, my phone kept ringing incessantly. The number was the same one that had called me at home earlier from the hospital. I thought it was another mistake, but then it hit me. They must have gotten my home and cell number from Eric's phone. But would a stranger named Eric have my home number in his phone? No way. I muttered to myself, realizing the truth. The Eric who was taken to the hospital was indeed the Eric I knew. But his car is here. That's why I thought the person taken to the hospital was someone else. I was still trying to make sense of it when another call came in on my phone, not from the hospital, but from another number. It was Eric's dad, Sam. This was definitely a call I shouldn't ignore, so I answered.
Hello, Michelle. Where are you right now?
According to Sam, he was calling on behalf of the hospital. It was indeed Eric who was taken to the hospital. Since I had been ignoring all the calls, they must have gone through Eric's contact list until they reached Sam. That's how he ended up contacting me. Which means, thinking it through, I replied, Eric was at a motel before he was taken to the hospital. So, something must have happened to him here, leading to his hospitalization. The car was left behind because there wasn't time to ask a service or a friend to move it. In other words, I had unintentionally obtained the best circumstantial evidence of his infidelity. The paramedics wouldn't have a reason to lie about where they found him.
I see.
Sam's voice sounded strained in response to my words. He had likely already been informed about where Eric was picked up and the situation in general. So, Sam must already know about Eric's infidelity. I felt sorry for Sam, but in a way, it was a relief that he understood quickly. Ignoring the calls might have been the right decision after all. But then again, why was Eric taken to the hospital?
Eric is safe for now. He's regained consciousness, but
Sam trailed off, leaving a heavy silence. It seemed difficult for him to explain. I told Sam I'd get more details later and headed to the hospital that had contacted me. It was quite a distance from the motel, so there weren't many places for emergency transport. I decided I would definitely bill Eric for the taxi fare later. With that decision, I arrived at the hospital, only to find a situation that made me want to laugh out loud.
Ugh.
Eric was sitting on a bed near the entrance. His face had none of the smugness he had shown when mocking me. He was sitting there looking utterly embarrassed, his face bright red. Sam and my mother-in-law, Maria, were glaring at him with eyes full of anger. They too had slightly red faces, likely from their anger. As I stepped into the hospital room, still bewildered by the situation, Eric noticed me.
Michelle, please talk to Dad and Mom for me.
The first thing he says is about his own convenience, not an apology or remorse. I'm just stunned. Not that I intended to help him, but any remaining pity I had for him completely vanished. What? You don't mean you're cheating, do you?
Oh, well.
Just so you know, I've already seen your car left at the motel. Eric's face turned pale at my harsh words. Meanwhile, Sam and Maria's faces grew even redder. Just to be sure, I'll confirm with the hospital staff, but the fact that you were cheating is undeniable. I didn't mention the other evidence I had. But even without saying anything, Eric had no way out anymore. He seemed to realize this. Eric hunched his shoulders and shrank back. It was truly as if his confident self from before had been a lie. Before anything else, explain what happened. At my sharp command, Eric flinched and began to explain bit by bit. Today, he had lied about working late and gone to a motel with his affair partner. They got a bit hungry, so his affair partner had brought some sandwiches, which they ate. After that, they used a lubricant to make things easier and started getting intimate when it happened. A horrifying sensation attacked the area where they used the lubricant, something beyond words. An intense, unknown feeling of both heat and cold overwhelmed them, throwing them into utter confusion. But that wasn't the only thing that happened to them. In the midst of their agony, they both experienced a sudden and severe urge to use the bathroom. Because of the strange situation, they couldn't even walk properly to the bathroom. The result was an absolutely horrific mess. Although his affair partner managed to call an ambulance, Eric had foamed at the mouth and lost consciousness. However, this wasn't due to the physical symptoms. The fear and panic of the inexplicable situation, along with the shame of wetting himself, caused Eric to completely lose his composure. In other words, the severe mental shock led him to fall unconscious. To make matters worse, the hotel staff and the paramedics witnessed their humiliating condition. On top of that, the affected area was thoroughly cleaned at the hospital. Given Eric's previous arrogance, the shock and embarrassment must have been far greater than we could imagine. Moreover, the entire embarrassing situation was likely explained in detail to Sam and Maria. Their red faces were not only from anger, but also from embarrassment. Imagining the humiliation Eric must be feeling, I honestly wanted to burst out laughing. If Sam and Maria weren't there, I probably would have pointed and laughed out loud. By now, the strange sensations and the urge to use the bathroom had completely subsided. There shouldn't be any lingering symptoms. That must have been tough. I barely managed to hold back my laughter. Noticing this, Eric looked down in frustration. It seemed likely that something had been tampered with in the lubricant. The urge to use the bathroom might have been due to something they ate. The police hadn't been contacted yet, so the details were still unclear. But one thing was certain. But I don't feel sorry for you. This is the punishment for your cheating.
Right.
Unable to argue with my accusation, Eric let out a groan. If he hadn't cheated, he wouldn't be in this situation. The humiliation he suffered was entirely his own fault.
Michelle, I'm truly sorry for what my foolish son did.
Sam said this as he and Maria bowed deeply to me. Not intending to blame them, I hurried to calm them down. Please, lift your heads, Sam, Maria. You two aren't to blame. The one at fault is. The ones who don't understand that cheating is unacceptable. That's who's at fault. Just as I was about to confront Eric again, someone unexpected appeared.
No, you're the one at fault.
From behind the curtain next to Eric's bed emerged an unexpected figure. Sally? Yes, it was Sally, my colleague, dressed in patient clothes. Considering we were in the same hospital room and this situation, I voiced my suspicion. Could it be that Eric's affair partner is?
It's not an affair. I'm Eric's true love.
Sally's passionate declaration left Sam and Maria dumbfounded while Eric buried his head in his hands. As we stood in shock, Sally continued her tale. Sally believed she was distanced by others because she was the daughter of a company executive. From our perspective, she was the one keeping her distance. Nonetheless, Eric treated Sally kindly, and they fell deeply in love, or so she claimed. To Sally, Eric was her knight in shining armor. To me, he's nothing but a shallow cheater.
Eric said you were boring because you took everything so seriously.
Sally boasted, and Sam and Maria's expressions turned even more sour. Perhaps they had hoped there was some justification for Eric's affair, that maybe I was partly to blame. But now they realized the problem lay with Eric's mindset, leaving them speechless. With his parents' expressions growing more severe, Eric turned even paler.
Unlike you, he called me exciting.
Oh, really? So, Sally, if you marry Eric, you won't do any housework?
Of course not.
Sally puffed out her chest confidently, but she was met with unexpected anger.
Are you an idiot?
It was none other than Maria, Eric's mother. Shaking with anger, Maria exploded at Sally.
What do you mean, idiot?
What's wrong with calling you an idiot?
Geez.
Sally tried to retort, but Maria's overwhelming anger silenced her.
A husband and wife support each other throughout their lives. What is this nonsense, both you and Eric?
Oh no.
It was my first time seeing Maria this furious. It might have been the same for Eric. He was visibly trembling. Even Sam seemed a bit pale.
Calling someone boring for being devoted is disgraceful. You should be ashamed.
Why should I have to hear that from you?
Sally foolishly tried to argue back. Maria's next shout cut her off. I was genuinely relieved it was just us in the hospital room.
Be quiet.
Gosh.
Seeing Sally scream again, Maria let out a deep, exasperated sigh.
If you marry Eric, I will be your mother-in-law.
Oh.
Sally, realizing this for the first time, bit her lip and looked down.
Arguing without even considering that. I cannot approve of your marriage to her, Eric.
No, I don't plan to marry her.
What do you mean?
Eric tried to appease Maria, likely to win her favor. But at that very moment, someone else appeared.
I thought so. That's just the kind of person you are.
It was Emily, another one of Eric's affair partners. Gone was the timid and gentle demeanor she had when I first met. Her eyes, filled with deep resentment and hatred, were fixed on Eric. The others who didn't know her looked confused.
Why are you here, Emily?
The paramedic mentioned that since Michelle wasn't answering the phone, they called everyone they could.
Emily must have been one of those contacts. I had planned to call her later anyway, so it worked out.
Who are you?
Nice to meet you. I'm Emily, one of Eric's affair partners.
What?
Eric probably didn't expect her to honestly reveal everything about herself. He looked shocked, eyes wide, trembling so much he seemed about to foam at the mouth again. Sam and Maria's faces showed a mix of emotions, as if they couldn't decide whether to cry or be angry. On the other hand, Sally, who had just been subdued by Maria, now turned her fury towards Emily.
What do you mean?
This is what I mean.
Emily remained calm as she walked over to Sally and handed her a thick brown envelope. Sally, with a mix of anger and suspicion, took it and pulled out the contents. The next moment, she let out a piercing scream.
What is this?
She threw the contents to the floor as if they were something filthy. Scattered around were photos. It printed images of Emily and Eric during their affair. I had asked Emily for evidence in case Eric tried to deny the affair, but I never expected it to be used like this. While it showed how angry Emily was at Eric and Sally, it also made me feel a pang of sympathy for her, considering she hadn't known it was an affair initially. When I glanced at Emily, she gave me a small, troubled smile, but only for a moment. But it lasted only for a moment. Her expression quickly returned into one filled with hatred.
Eric, can you explain everything?
Well, you see,
Unable to explain his cheating, Eric just forced a nervous laugh and mumbled. Sally's face contorted in obvious disgust at his pathetic display. It made me wonder what I ever saw in him. That's his true nature. You should walk away while you can. Emily said this calmly, then dropped a bombshell as if it was nothing.
Oh, by the way, how was the lubricant? I mixed in some animal anti-inflammatory ointment. It must have been quite effective.
Even I was shocked, but it must have been even more for those affected. Anti-inflammatory ointment. It's used for muscle pain and tendinitis. For animals, it's much stronger than what's used for humans. No wonder they were in so much pain. Eric and Sally were stunned, their eyes wide with shock.
Men should bring something like this out of consideration, right? But it was just for your own benefit, wasn't it?
Emily's final taunt was too much for Eric.
you little. How dare you?
He tried to raise his voice, but I cut him off. That's right. In the end, you only ever think about yourself. You're the worst. Sam and Maria glared at Eric, completely deflating him. With that, the confrontation ended for the moment. A week later, Eric and I got divorced. Whether it was to save face or avoid paying alimony, Eric resisted until the end. However, with undeniable evidence in front of him, there was no way for Eric to escape. With the images I had from Emily, he couldn't lie his way out. Moreover, Sam and Maria told him they would completely cut ties with him if he didn't agree to the divorce. All this combined made Eric finally agree to the divorce. Additionally, he had to pay me $50,000 in alimony, an amount well above the usual. Sam and Maria also ensured the division of assets was fair to me, for which I was grateful. Naturally, I also demanded compensation from Sally. Considering her personality, I expected difficulties, but the payment was surprisingly smooth. I think it was largely because I informed her parents about everything. As executives, they probably wanted to quickly suppress any scandal. As proof, after the incident, Sally was removed from her role in the joint project. Eric, likely pressured indirectly by Sally's parents, was also removed from his role. In hindsight, this was a bad move. With Eric and me divorced and both of them removed from the project, people began to speculate about us. By neither confirming nor denying these speculations, I allowed rumors to flourish. As a result, both of them were subjected to even stronger rumors and curious stares, eventually leading them to quit the company. I haven't kept track of what happened to them afterward. Eric, having lost all his confidence, reportedly became a recluse at his parents' house. One could say Eric's life was essentially over. However, to be honest, I was no longer interested. As for Emily, she turned herself in to the police to atone for mixing the anti-inflammatory ointment into the lubricant. Apparently, it wasn't difficult because she knew Eric kept the lubricant in his bag and he was careless. Also, the reason they both got sick was simply because they ate the sandwiches Sally made. Their misfortune was a result of their own actions after work.
I should take responsibility for what I did.
This likely referred not only to the mixing incident, but also to the affair itself. Emily's inherently serious nature made me even more angry at Eric. I felt like going to slap him. However, with Sam and Maria watching over things, no charges were filed, so it was uncertain what would happen legally. As for me, I am now enjoying my newfound freedom, both mentally and physically. With the alimony I received, I'm indulging in some luxuries. Additionally, I've been selected to fill the gap left in the joint project. I plan to bring my junior colleague along for the experience. Given that he supported me through this ordeal, I want to return the favor. Sometimes I notice him looking at me, but I'm probably just imagining things. Besides, I'm done with romance for a while. Life is still long. Maybe someday, if I feel like it, falling in love again wouldn't be so bad. Next time, I'll be wary of guys who only say what sounds good